Welcome back to Combo Couch, everyone. I am Pasta Jardula here with Niko House and Johnny Sue on the ones and twos. Let's get your microphone close to your mouth so I can hear you.
I'm a loud dude, man. So that's why I got it.
Yeah, it's got to,
Okay.
Get it up. Look at your thing.
I have trouble. I have trouble getting it up sometimes.
Man,
The
I don't
microphone.
I don't even
Don't
know how
be
that.
weird,
Is
bruh.
that a way to start off with Super Tuesday?
I mean, basically, isn't that the motto of the Democratic Party? They have trouble getting it up sometimes. That's what I thought.
Well, I can tell you what they do have trouble with, fam, is that their voting system here in Los Angeles is out of whack. It's going to be crazy, and it's Super Tuesday. The time is here. It's election time, baby. How many states? 1/3 of the nation will go today. Big states like California, Texas, Massachusetts, all online. Minnesota. Yesterday's news of Amy Klobuchar dropping out. The day before, Pete Buttigieg dropped out. What does that mean today, Niko House, for Super Tuesday?
So Amy Klobuchar dropping out. You talking about what does it mean as far as both of them dropping out?
Yes.
Okay. So what it means, one, in my humble opinion, is that it shows how much Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar were worried about being embarrassed in the minority vote. Then it shows their support for Biden, right? I don't think this is as beneficial for Biden as some people have kind of made it out to be. Although it is demonstrative of the willingness of the establishment to coalesce behind whoever they think has the best chance to beat Bernie Sanders. Obviously, they're not going to coalesce around the person who's best equipped to beat Donald Trump, but they're definitely willing to coalesce behind the Bernie Sanders, defeater. But I do believe that this was actually an act of desperation and self-preservation more than a belief that Biden can actually get the job done. I think that we do know that Biden and Buttigieg share donors, and obviously they had to make a choice.
Yeah.
South Carolina was only able to be one. I mean, we can talk about the legitimacy of that W, but Biden does do well with older black voters. Bernie has has it locked when it comes to young black voters, and Bernie has it locked when it comes to Latino voters and Arab voters, and Muslim voters as well. So they could have potentially set themselves up to never have a successful run at presidency in the future if they go in and get a combined 0.05% of the vote. So instead what they do is endorse Joe Biden, say that's why I'm just being noble and coalescing around the person that could beat Trump. So it makes it look a little bit worse in my opinion than it actually is. What would have been bad is which would have made sense if you actually wanted to actually help Biden, but what would have been bad is if Buttigieg stays in California, Klobuchar stays in Minnesota, gets those delegates guaranteed, and then hands those delegates off directly to Joe Biden at the convention. That would have been the pragmatic thing to do, but this is
we
in my
think
opinion,
that.
Yeah.
There's other math behind that, and I just want to kind of talk because you're hitting on it right on the nose. A lot of people say, why not just stay in the race, get those delegates you can grab, hand them over to your establishment lackey at the convention eventually to help you get over the top. But the truth of the matter is that the California math really gets in the factor here today. Because you have to become viable to get the majority. In other words, 40% of the delegates are statewide. You have to get at least 15% to be viable. If you don't get 15% statewide, 40% of those delegates you don't get. And they do that 40% county by county by county by county by county as well. You have to reach that threshold of viability. Now, with Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg in the race, they take away votes from who? Biden and Warren.
Yeah, they don't take them away from
They don't take away from Bernie at all. They don't take away from Tulsi, that's for sure. Tulsi's actually the outsider horse, which we're going to talk about that because a lot of factors are going to come into play. If those two had stayed in the race for California, they would have split the establishment vote. Bernie Sanders might have been the only one getting over 40%, and that would have happened in a lot of counties, and he would have took the majority of the delegates out of California, and it would have been game over, lights out, day over. So the fact that California moved up their primary, they played a spoiler part for these kind of like outside chance establishment candidates like Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar, who are now outsy of the race.
Yeah, I think that's an unintended consequence, right? We also have to realize just how much Tulsi threw off the balance of this race, right? She threw a wrench in the plan of the establishment candidates. We've been saying, Pasta, now look. How long have we been saying that this is exactly what the establishment was planning on doing? This is why we said over and over again since January of 2019, we cannot simply categorically dismiss Marianne Williamson and the importance she will have to this race come convention time. Yang and the importance he'll have to this in this race. Despite how you might feel about him, let's be clear, he does care about his brand, and he has already endorsed Bernie in the past. So people don't just go from like Bernie, for example, to Buttigieg without sacrificing your brand along the way. And Yang is smart enough to know that. We still have Tulsi Gabbard in this race, who in January we were saying the same thing. And this is before I even endorsed her. We have to know who our allies are, and we have to uplift them when they do something great, whether it's Yang's UBI, whether it's Marianne Williamson in reparations, whether it's Tulsi on the OFF Act and the Securing America's Elections Act. We can't pick and choose when we do the right thing as far as celebrating policies and the people who put those policies forward, because if you do that, now you're leaving yourself with the potentiality of what we're seeing here, depending on how Super Tuesday goes. But I mean, I would say it's probably still even true. You're putting Bernie on an island with Biden and the entire establishment now. Yeah. And it's cool that Marianne Williamson endorsed Bernie. Guess what? How many votes does Marianne Williamson, or delegates does Marianne Williamson have? 0. It might help him in California. Will it help him at the convention? Probably not all that much, if we're being honest. Yeah. Yang, he has 0 delegates, so even if he came out and endorsed Bernie right now, it's cool. Some of his supporters would go to him, but not enough to flip the convention. Tulsi could drop out right now with 0 delegates. Endorse Bernie, and what the hell does that mean? Nothing. Yeah, it's a temporary boost, I guess. And
it's once again, it's that whole symbolic. Yeah, everybody loves the symbolism. Let's get behind the progressives now and unite. And I don't mean to kind of like shimmy people over here, but it's more important she stays in, because today with all these states, even America, Samoa is going today. We get some delegates, somebody gets back on the debate stage, right? Yeah. And there's another big part, the optics that play in here. If Tulsi Gabbard is on that stage, it takes so much pressure off Bernie Sanders, and he can just pick his spots. Boom. Boom. Yeah. Boom. She can go after people and take away a lot of the flack from him. Same thing in the media, and they'll be saying, why is she dropping out? Why isn't she dropped out? Why isn't she dropped out?
Yeah, it's weird.
Instead of attacking Bernie, and his message becomes more vibrant. It gets out there even more. Really quick, Niko, I just want to go to some Super Chats. David Reinhardt, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. It's always appreciated on the couch. Welcome to Super Tuesday, by the way. You'll see the little stream going right on the top over there. The little ticker. Johnny made it up. It's beautiful. And we'll talk about some of the important things, like Texas has the 3rd largest amount of delegates. Very important to come into play today. What's going to happen in Tejas? Tejas going the same day as California. A little odd. And we'll also tell you the state's voting. And we'll give you up-to-the-date, up-to-the-minute results.
To my in-laws that are Mexican, I did not tell him that was okay. Tejas is not a real thing, people, okay? To my Mexican in-laws, I have nothing to do with that. So I just want everybody to know that.
But we will pay attention to Tejas. And Reeve Barker, thank you for this. Oh, wait. So David Reinhardt says, we saw reports that Obama forced Pete and Amy out. It wouldn't surprise me, though, because he's still part of that kind of like establishment that Clinton. He's still kind of making some shots, calling a few things, throwing his 2 cents in there. And
the reality of the situation is, people really don't realize how egotistical Obama is, and how much he is about protecting his legacy, not only from it being dragged through the mud by somebody like a Donald Trump, but also from someone who could usurp his the myth or the legend, if you will, of Barack Obama, the first black president and the most popular president in modern history, because that's what he is technically. If Bernie wins, Bernie would clearly usurp him as the most popular president of probably all time, if we're, at least up to date, if we're being real. And Barack Obama doesn't want that, because in order for you to do that, in order for him to become that popular president, what does he have to do? You get rid of Obamacare and bring something better to the table. You don't overthrow regimes or send special forces and black ops to overthrow regimes. Instead, you potentially cooperate and engage in diplomacy. And that's not what Obama did. Obama pressed buttons from his office rather than actually engaging with these leaders. Yeah. So I think that's also something that he's very fearful of, is that what Bernie has to do to be greater than Obama requires him to undo and upstage Obama in so many ways that I think it scares him. Yeah,
well, the foreign policy is a lot like Obama's right now in my mind. I don't want to say it's as bad, because
I agree.
The drone fair, but I mean, at least he's called out Saudi Arabia. But once again, his attitude towards China, his attitude towards Russia, his attitude towards Trump going to meet Kim Jong-un. I hate to say this, but Donald Trump is going to get on that stage during the debate and say, I ended the Afghan war. Obama started it. Bernie Sanders voted for it. He's going to be able to say that. So Bernie's got to come.
Yeah.
He's got to really change the foreign policy and get on track. Thank you for over on the Rockfin Fire Puff. He saw us the other day at the rally. Good to see you, Fire Puff.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
3 people on the Rockfin. Listen, if you get a chance, you can go on over. Niko House has a Rockfin. The Combo Couch has a Rockfin. If you can afford to endorse us both, endorse both. If you can only afford to endorse one, that would be us, the Combo Couch. Just kidding. But if you can help us out, we love Rockfin. We're building the platform. We have his MCSC YouTube's up. The Combo Couch YouTube is up. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be a long day.
Lord Jesus. Long day and tomorrow.
People coming on, people coming off. We have a guest coming on right away. Today, amongst all these Super Tuesday states, Democrats abroad get to vote as well. So we're going to go on a quick break after Reeve Barker. Senior consultant John Smith for Pete says Obama called on Pete to drop. Pete said no. DNC pulled funding to his campaign to force him out. Niko,
damn.
Your thoughts and opinions on that?
If that is true, did their article report that?
I have not seen any of those reports. We've been out at the polls running around trying to find stuff, but Johnny's got it up there.
So it says the New York Times. According to the New York Times, after Buttigieg suspended his campaign Sunday evening, Obama reportedly spoke with him on the phone and advised him to use his considerable leverage ahead of Tuesday's primary in 13 states, which is kind of crazy, right? Because
so tonight, I am making the difficult decision.
It's interesting to me that Obama is going to push Joe Biden, knowing that Joe Biden is a loser, right? Obama was the one who told Joe Biden he shouldn't run. But what we are seeing is that even though Obama hasn't made an official endorsement, we have a former president of the United States of America putting his thumb on the scale. Again, right?
Again.
And before he was wasting American tax dollars to campaign for one party. I get it, right? He's a Democrat. Yeah, you want to advocate for the person you want to advocate for in your party. When it's a primary situation, that's one thing. But when you want to use your power as president and the resources you don't get to pick whether you pay taxes based off of whether or not you're Republican, Democrat, Green Party, or Libertarian. Yeah. You don't get to do that. If he was on that campaign trail, he was using American tax dollars to do it, to endorse one party and one candidate from one party who was as bad, if not, well, a lot of people would say worse than Donald Trump is, regardless of what party she was part of. And he was using American tax dollars to do that. So we have this for the second time, Barack Obama trying to put his thumb on the scales to influence the outcome of an election as a president and after he was a president. That's just, in my opinion, not ethical.
It's unethical as can be. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, Democrats abroad, old school guy, Mark Sloboda will be joining us here on the Convo Couch. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be a long day. There are going to be people coming in and out. Take the get the stream, share the stream, leave it on all day. As Johnny Sue gets numbers and reports, we'll have Eva coming in, help out. We'll be giving you and feeding you the results. You don't have to watch the mainstream media. You can watch independent media now on primary days. Thank you for joining the Convo Couch. Here's the first break. We'll see you in a little bit back with Mark Sloboda. Welcome back to the Combo Couch. Pasta Jardula, Niko House, Johnny Sue in the studios. And from the Democrats abroad, ex-Democrats abroad, Super Tuesday, we do vote Democrats abroad. We brought in an expert to give us a little knowledge on what's going on over there. Mark Sloboda's in the house. How you doing, Mark?
Hi, Pasta. Hi, Niko. Good to hear from you. Yes, ex-Democrat. Be the chairman of Democrats Abroad Russia. When I first came to Moscow, grew disenchanted with the Democratic Party and resigned. But I was also briefly, not that it really meant anything, but I was briefly elected the vice president of Progressive Democrats Abroad Caucus.
Hey, which one you like better? Do you miss the old Democrats Abroad, or you like the progressive group?
I think they're both pretty inconsequential, and the Democratic Party doesn't really hands down orders to them. So
yeah. Well, why were you so disenfranchised or disenchanted from the Democrats abroad and the Democratic Party as a whole?
Well, I mean, it became obvious to me, even from a distance, when within Democrats abroad, the machinations of the Democratic Party machine to make sure that progressives did not achieve any type of representative position within the party or within the country. And that became pretty obvious to me at all. And when the best that could be put forward was Obama, and Obama ended up destroying Libya and backing jihadis to overthrow the Syrian government.
So
fascination with my any type of relation with American politics.
So obviously you're not a Democrat abroad at the moment anymore, but you were, and I'm assuming you associated with a lot of other Democrats abroad. Was foreign policy a central issue for many Democrats abroad? Because unfortunately, I think we've kind of seen, it doesn't look like it on our end, but I mean, I've talked to people who live abroad who are American who really discuss this a lot, especially our contentious relationship at the moment with Russia. As somebody who you clearly look like you're living in Russia, is this a central issue for Democrats abroad, or is this kind of just something that's unique for you and a couple of others?
Yeah, I actually emigrated to Russia. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think far more than the average American, far more than the average Democrat, for Americans who live abroad, even be they Democrats abroad or Republicans abroad, I think both of them, from sometimes different perspectives, have a much keener focus on foreign policy and America's relations with other countries. Often, particularly the countries that they themselves are expats with and more familiar with, and thus more able to kind of pierce the mainstream media fog of disinformation about the particular countries that they live in, and thus often more critical of American foreign policy towards their own country. And then they might just become more skeptical about it towards other countries as well.
Have you felt like some of the Democrats abroad or the progressives abroad or the people you still stay in contact with, have they kind of coalesced around a couple candidates? I mean, how do they feel about Bernie Sanders as opposed to Joe Biden? How do they feel about Tulsi Gabbard as well?
Yeah, I could not tell you because I have maintained no contact with Democrats whatsoever.
We can't really say we blame you. But so how do you? I don't know if you do you still vote in the U.S. elections as an independent?
No, I don't vote in American elections anymore because living in Russia, taking Russian citizenship, even though technically I still do have American citizenship, I don't really consider myself an American. I certainly don't want to be accused of meddling in the elections. You're
going to be accused regardless.
I'm a bit scared even to voice an opinion now.
Well, and look, that is non-unique to you people abroad. Don't worry, we're scared to voice opinions here sometimes because either way you get accused of meddling. So I have two questions. One, what do you personally think of the whole Russia Gate situation that now it's even beginning to kind of inseminate our campaigns, like the presidential campaigns, like in the Democratic Party, and how, what is your perspective on how the candidates have handled it? Like, who do you find that's handled it the worst and who do you find has handled it the best? And then secondly, I would like for you to shed some light for our viewers on a lot of the criticisms, whether they be justified or otherwise, on the elections in Russia, because a lot of people keep calling it a quote-unquote authoritarian country, but from my understanding, by definition, it is not, even if people do cast aspersions wherever they may cast them. So I would like for you to shed light on both of those two things.
That was a good question.
Yeah. Okay, so first, well, I mean, obviously the whole Russia Gate is by and far complete insane neo-McCarthyite nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean, you just look at Carnegie Mellon's research into the issue of meddling in foreign countries, and you'll see that it's a bit of projection, that it's actually the U.S. that has meddled in other countries' elections, including Russia's, to a much greater degree than any other country in the world. And that's not even counting regime changes and more overt CIA stuff, just meddling but it's okay when they do it because it's democratization, right? I mean, it was not so long ago when Time magazine was running a cover proclaiming that Americans had saved Russia by making sure that Boris Yeltsin was elected. And there was even a movie, what was it, Saving Boris or something like that?
Yeah.
That the braggadocio about open meddling in Russia's elections and how proud they were of it. And the fact that what amounts to a Russian clickbait farm, right? A commercial business, if you take a look at it, that's clearly what it was, made a few ads associated with the campaign only because that was what was attracting people to click at that particular moment without choosing any particular candidate. And to say that is some kind of organized Russian state interference, that the idea that, oh my God, I saw a meme promoted by a Russian clickbait bot. I'm brainwashed now. And,
by the way,
a
farm that was created.
Fact, anyone listening to this has been brainwashed by Putin.
Yeah.
Quite obviously.
Rasputin.
And you should seek political help. It's absurd.
Well, I was just saying it's interesting because that bot farm I'm assuming you're talking about the one from the indictment.
The Bernie Sanders Jesus.
That farm was created like years before this situation even popped off, and on top of that, they weren't even. First of all, had nothing to do with the election, and I think that they just literally labeled a bunch of random Russian people that have no serious political consequence, and we just said, hey, here's some indictments that happened at the very beginning of Trump's presidency. And I just find it hard to believe that you were investigating these specific Russians about Russian meddling from 2016, and you have you've done enough investigating to send through an indictment at the federal level by 2017. That's just, it's crazy to me how we've seen this narrative that's come about that says basically, if you're Russian, we are going to not ever give you the benefit of the doubt. You are not entitled to due process. You do not get this. You are not guaranteed the same constitutional rights as people who live in the United States. But even if you live in the United States, that's not guaranteed either, as long as you are Russian. Is that basically how it seems from abroad?
Yeah, I mean, and that's only one case of the U.S. trying to extend its, quote, justice system around the world, quite literally. And I think, the repeated, I mean, take a look back in history, and you'll see that any president that in any way even suggested they might challenge bipartisan establishment foreign policy orthodoxy, which, since the end of the Cold War has always been, and even decades before that, has been predicated on U.S.-led global military hegemony. Kennedy, Carter, even Reagan at a time, Obama, Trump, and now you've got candidates like Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard. They were all smeared in the mainstream media as being Russian assets, or Russia wants to see them elected, and so on. This is actually nothing new, although it's been blown certainly to a level that it never has before. But if you look back, you'll find the headlines, and John F. Kennedy and Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan and even Obama were all accused of being Russian assets or wanting to be elected by Russia in the media at the time as well. So it seems to me to be a fundamental type of demonization and a symptom of a rot in the American political system, that anyone who steps outside of a certain line and questions foreign policy has to be demonized that way. And anyone who wants to then vote for them is basically denied agency, right? I mean, that's really what the Democrats, they couldn't come to grips with nearly half the people of America, and the most important half according to the U.S. curious electoral college system of democracy, when nearly half of Americans voted for Trump, and they couldn't accept. They were brainwashed by Russia. They didn't support the issues they did. It was all some type of omniscient Putin mind control. When you take a look around the headlines around the world, evidently there isn't much that Putin doesn't control, except obviously for many things in Russia, which he doesn't quite have the same amazing powers.
Yeah, it's crazy because
Putin have everywhere else in the world.
If you ask mainstream media, Putin is literally the most effective intelligence asset, president, soldier, and hacker in the history of the world. It's pretty impressive, I gotta admit. But I do want to say, speaking of Putin, if you could you just where do people get this idea that Russia is an authoritarian country? Because it didn't seem to be that way whenever Yeltsin was there and we had put him there. They weren't referring to Yeltsin as an authoritarian, but the moment that Putin takes over, it was immediately he's an authoritarian. He's cheating every single election, and there's even I would venture to say conspiracy theories about him that are like rival Bond villain conspiracy theories. So where do people get this idea that it's an authoritarian regime in Russia?
Yeah, I mean, that's all extremely amazing and ironic, considering that it was the U.S. and particularly Clinton-backed Yeltsin kleptocracy that not only plunged Russia into economic chaos and a depression far greater in for Russia's terms than the Great Depression, but he openly fired on the Russian Parliament, the Duma, that was democratically elected, with tanks, and seized complete power by diktat for a time in the country.
Who did? Yeltsin?
Yeltsin.
I did not know that.
Yeah, look back. I mean, I'm sure enough of the details are even probably in Wikipedia. Russian, under Yeltsin, the parliament was put under military siege, and tanks were firing shells at the Russian Duma, which is called, ironically, the White House. So yeah, that's a point of history, and then afterwards he assumed essentially constitutional power by diktat for a time in the country. But it was what the U.S. wanted to see happen in Russia. They wanted Yeltsin to allow the oligarchs to denude Russia of its wealth into the hands of a few private individuals, and then a lot of it could be bought and sold to, presumably American companies and so forth. But Russia, okay, so every country that the U.S. doesn't like now is characterized often as authoritarian, or the other one they like to use is illiberal. And despite the many failures of democratic peace theory, what the democratic peace theory of international relations is now revolved to is, even when the U.S. goes to war with other democracies, it now attempts to delegitimize the other country as a democracy. You're not nearly as real democratic as we are, right? Because obviously the U.S. has the world's best, most perfect U.S. democratic system that has to be exported to every
Are you
other
trying
country
to
in the
tell
world.
me that the U.S. coin flip democracy is not the best democracy in the world? Because I don't think that's fair.
The pull the card in Vegas was the best one. Oh, I pulled an ace. It's low. Sorry.
We're the coin flip democracy.
Well, I think the Iowa caucuses have a lot to teach Russia about, for instance, about math. How that if you actually correct math problems, mathematically incorrect rounding, that would be injecting a outside opinion that would ruin the purity of the democratic elections in Iowa.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, Mark.
It's pretty absurd. Russians, of course, aren't really aware of this type of minutia of detail that American progressives are aware of, where even the mainstream Americans are not aware of. Of course, doesn't reach most Russians. Explain it to them, they're like, no.
The rest of the world says, nah, I can't be real.
That's why we need your vodka. We need it badly. Listen, Mark, We do have an election today, and I know you got to get out of here. You got a lot of work to do, but I want to talk really briefly because we've talked to you on the show, staying with Putin. You once described Putin and Erdogan back to back on a chessboard, moving along Syria, knifing people little by little by little. But it now appears that Putin has Erdogan in a position where it might be checkmate soon when it comes to Idlib in Syria. Am I inaccurate when I say that, or can you give me a little bit of unpacking and our audience of what's actually going on? Because nobody's touching on this except for Tulsi Gabbard over here, and a lot of people don't understand the situation in Idlib. Can you give us a little insight to what's going on right now?
First of all, actually, what I said is Putin and Erdogan waltzing across a chessboard with knives poised at each other's back.
Yes,
that sounds way better.
Yeah, that's the way I like to picture it. And first of all, Tulsi has what's happening in Syria absolutely right, absolutely correct. I mean, nearly every word she says, I've very rarely found anything to disagree with anything how she has characterized what's happening there, the U.S. role there, what's going on there now. And no, it is not the situation where, I mean, we are approaching kind of an end game of sorts, but it's certainly not one where Putin and Russia or the Syrian government that they're supporting can declare anytime any type of definite victory over Erdogan. In fact, just a couple days ago, it looked like the exact opposite. And the situation is extremely fluid there. Basically, we've talked before about how the situation in Syria is basically a three-way Mexican standoff with the Americans and their Kurdish proxies now sitting in East Syria, militarily occupying Syria's oil fields against Turkey, which has assumed responsibility for all the various 31 flavors of jihad that were previously supported by this whole host of countries that were using them in a regime change operation, a proxy war against Syria. That was once the U.S., the U.K., Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, Israel, Turkey, and a few others. And now they've all basically dropped out except for Turkey. And Turkey has organized what's left of the sectarian jihadists and Islamists. They're still arming, training, and salarying them in most cases, like the U.S. once was. But they've now been reduced to some areas of Turkish occupation of northern Syria, which have not really been touched. And in particular, there is one mountainous province on the Turkish border called Idlib. And Idlib is still literally held by Al-Qaeda, also known as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, along with a few other international terrorist groups, the Turkestan Islamic Party and Kharas al-Din, which owe fealty to Al-Qaeda. And even the U.S. government recognizes that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is Al-Qaeda, rebranded in an attempt to avoid targeting. And both the U.S. and the UN, as well as Russia, even Turkey, everyone labels Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, Al-Qaeda, as a terrorist organization. And it was just not a year and a half ago that the entire Western mainstream media admitted that Idlib is the last real stronghold, at least outside of Turkish direct military occupation in Syria, where there are, quote, rebels, and these rebels are Al-Qaeda, and that Al-Qaeda has complete control of that territory. That has gone out of the newspapers completely now. If you look back, you'll find it. It was grudgingly admitted to. But now it's mentioned once again as a rebel stronghold or a rebel bastion. And why is that? It's because the Syrian government and Russia have been moving towards an endgame in Idlib, and have made substantial gains towards removing them from the province. And this Al-Qaeda, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, is supported by the Erdogan regime in Turkey. They have more direct proxies. The relationship is more of a sometimes problematic ally than, say, a direct proxy like the other jihadist groups that have been lumped together into an official, uniformed Turkish proxy, National Liberation Front. There's another one called the Syrian National Army. But Idlib is controlled by al-Qaeda, and Turkey cooperates with al-Qaeda. They supply al-Qaeda. Every day there are convoys moving back and forth across the former Turkish-Syrian border there, effectively, providing gasoline, ammunition, weapons, food supplies, all of these things that, of course, territory controlled by al-Qaeda doesn't produce on its own. And there's nowhere else for them to be supplied out of. So there's really no denying where they're getting there. And Turkey entered into a deal with Russia on behalf of the Syrian government that Turkey still won't acknowledge back over a year ago, called the Sochi Agreement, whereby Turkey was supposed to remove al-Qaeda from a demilitarized zone in Idlib. They were supposed to remove the heavy weapons from their other proxies, and they were supposed to open two critical highways, the M5 and the M4, which come down from Aleppo, the second largest city in Syria, down to Damascus. That's the M5, kind of diagonal across through Idlib. And it's vital for Syria's economic recovery and for the territorial integrity of their country to have that highway restored. And the other one is the M4, which comes off of the M5. And that links then that Aleppo, there's a joint city there called Sarakib, that links then Aleppo with the coastal province of Latakia and sea trade and so on. Two vital highways. Turkey promised in the agreements that in cooperation with Russia to remove the militants from this highway and reopen it to civilian traffic. They have met none of these agreements. Also, they stood by while their other proxies were driven out or absorbed. It wasn't a whole lot of military conflict by al-Qaeda in Idlib about a year and a half ago. And al-Qaeda came to completely dominate Idlib. They stood by, and they continue to cooperate them. They have some, quote, observation posts, which they were supposed to use to monitor and help disarm extremists, including al-Qaeda, which have become occupation posts. And Erdogan is extremely upset at the prospect of